Welcome to Tech Career Podcast, creating valuable and relevant content to encourage, motivate, and empower you to achieve your career goals. Who wouldn't like to get paid more? Much more? Well, you can. And today we will talk about it how. The hiring process can be a stressful time, and there are many misconceptions about this being a one-way street. The reality is that you have much more power and leverage than what you think. Negotiating your salary should be something that everybody should do, but not many know how to do it. In today's episode, we will talk with an expert who will help us learn the art of negotiating your salary. Our special guest today is Brandon Bramley. Brandon is the founder of the Salary Negotiator. He has a background in strategic negotiations from working at many procurement and vendor management roles. He also has over 10 years of experience in negotiating salaries and currently runs the Salary Negotiator. He's coached clients through hundreds of salary negotiations with companies ranging from small business, startups, and some of the largest corporations such as Google, Meta, formerly known as Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. Hey, Brandon, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Christian. Excited to be here.
You know, I was really excited when we connected on LinkedIn, and I saw your background and the topic that we were going to discuss today, because it's such a powerful tool that a lot of people don't really know it's available to them, and they don't know how to do it. Which is negotiating salary. But before we even get there, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of background on me, in addition, is I am the founder of the Salary Negotiator. Been doing this for a while, actually 10 years to be exact, where I actually spun up the business about 5 years to start actually coaching clients and helping them actually get a better job offer. Because as you said, I think we are chatting through it, Christian, it's definitely one of those situations that you don't do very often, but it definitely gets a little nervous. And some people lose the confidence to do it. But we've found that it is a critical step in the hiring process. So we try to jump in and help as we can.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So as we get into this topic, it's interesting that you're doing something that I really haven't really seen many organizations do, companies or individuals, and maybe it's just a part of a much bigger message or coaching that some individuals do. But being able to specialize in something like this very important thing, which is negotiating your salary, it's quite interesting. So how did you even get involved in this area of salary negotiation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Christian. So it's kind of random how I got into it. So when I was actually at the WP Carey School of Business, right before I graduated, I ended up getting a job offer with American Airlines. So as an undergraduate, I decided, hey, this is for a professional negotiation role where my core role is going to be to do business to business negotiations. So I should try to prove myself by trying to negotiate my job offer. So being an undergrad, not having that much work experience, I gave it a go. And I was honestly surprised at how well it went. I got an increase on my base. I even got a sign-on bonus. So coming out of college with a sign-on bonus was a huge bump. And then the wild thing is it was with American Airlines. So I didn't even know it was on the table, but they gave me 60,000 airline miles that they gave me before I started. So it actually paid for a 3-week trip to Ecuador before I even started with the airline. So what I did is, since I was doing that, I was also in my negotiations class in college. I took it back to my negotiations professor, turned it in as my year-end project. And she actually put me in touch with someone else in the class who just got a job offer with American Airlines. So I ended up actually helping him negotiate his salary. That was successful as well. Then when we actually started at American Airlines, we were essentially in a cohort of all these career professionals. But what I found out is we were the only two that actually negotiated our job offer, because everyone else just assumed we're undergrads, we're excited to get a job, didn't even push on the subject. So what ended up happening is, as people started to change roles and move companies, they would come to me to help them negotiate their salaries. So I did that for a few years. Then that kind of blossomed to where I was now helping colleagues, friends, coworkers, and their friends and colleagues, until I decided to go ahead and turn it into a side business that I did 5 years ago. And since then, we've been able to help hundreds of candidates get more on their job offer and really focus on like what are the proven steps to negotiate a job offer and how do you do that without jeopardizing your relationship with the hiring team.
Yeah, that is very important right there. There's because there's a way, the right way to do it, right? A lot of people, if you don't know how to negotiate, and that's just not about the salary, but negotiating in general. I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So I was born and raised in Mexico, right? And in Mexico, when you go to like a swap meet or things like that, the person that's selling you a product is usually telling you a price, but the locals know that that's not the real price. So they're always gonna bump it up a little bit. So I think that a lot of Mexicans are very good at negotiating because of it, because they understand that the price that they are telling you is not the right price. Now, this is going the other way around. Now you're negotiating a lower price, but now on this side, on the salary negotiation, you're gonna negotiate a higher price, right? Which is gonna be your salary. But it's very interesting that you were saying how you took a class in college about salary negotiation. That is quite interesting. Can you expand a little bit more on that class?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, it was their class on all negotiations. So we went through a bunch of different cases, whether it was like a business to business negotiation or actually negotiating your job offer with a company.
Mhm.
And the timeline just like worked out well to where we went through that case, got a chance to do it, and then I decided to take those skills and actually give it a go in real life with American Airlines, and it ended up working out great.
That's
And then
awesome.
from there obviously, the negotiation strategies have changed quite a bit
Mhm.
since I did it as an undergrad. But really getting that confidence of, oh, they didn't rescind the offer. If anything, they actually wanted me more. I got a chance to show my professional skills and how I'd work with them professionally.
Right.
And getting it a pay raise before I even started was just like a huge motivator and kind of got me excited before I started the job.
That's interesting. So negotiating your salary is even part of the things that they're gonna be looking at for a candidate. Like if somebody's negotiating a salary, they're gonna be like, okay, this guy is not just accepting anything, right? He's negotiating. He knows the value that he brings. And by the same token, you can do the same thing for the company, right? I mean, you know the value of the company you're going to be representing. And in that sense, like if you're in a sales job or whatever, you will be able to sell the value of the organization, the products, the services, and such.
Yeah, I mean that's the key to it, right? It's your one chance to kind of display your professional skills and how you have difficult conversations with like internal parties, because it doesn't matter which job you take. Most jobs you're either doing like external negotiations or internal negotiations, trying to prioritize your projects, meet with others. So this is a chance to show that you can have these difficult conversations in like a confident, kind way, and kind of boost your salary at the same time.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, it was very interesting to see how very organically your business grew, right? And really, it wasn't even a business at the beginning. It was more of you just helping out colleagues and friends. But this it seems to me that this made you realize there was a need, right? I mean, there was a need in this very, very niche space of negotiating salary.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would have never thought this would be where my career transitioned, especially since my last role was at Amazon, where I was doing business to business negotiations. But what kept happening is I started the side business, so I still kept working with referrals until it started to take off online, starting to get more clients, and I started to notice that I actually enjoyed helping people negotiate and get more money and kind of transition their lives compared to just clawing back additional money for like this larger company. Almost that like Robin Hood mentality where I used to take from like the small companies, give back to the big companies, and now I take from like the poor and kind of get them more money. So it's definitely a little bit more like rewarding, and was a really good transition to take my skills in negotiation and kind of take that to a more personal
Hey
route.
man, we should add that to your logo, like the Robin Hood of salary negotiation. I love it.
Might have to.
Now, depending on your situation when looking for a job, uh, you may think that you just need to get paid or whatever they offer you, or just accept any offer they give you, right? I feel that when you look at people that are looking for jobs, sometimes they're looking for jobs because they lost their current job, and or because they're looking for something better for them, right? And or maybe they're tired of the current job, and that puts them in the situation where they apply for a job, they go through this process, and then they get an offer and they think, okay, I just need to get it, and they're just so hungry for getting that job, they will accept anything. However, the reality is very different. I feel that both the candidates looking for a job and the organization looking for the candidate, for the right candidate, are in need, right? There's a need and there is a mutual value and benefit that they can get from each other, right? So why don't you help us understand what are some of these myths? Because I feel that there are a lot of myths in salary negotiation, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's you couldn't be more spot on, Christian. I mean, that's what happens, right? Is your focus goes from I want to get this job, this is my dream company, and you're going through the interview stage where you're trying to show that you're the best one for the role. And even once you get the job offer, you don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. So you're coming out of that focus to where it makes it very hard to negotiate and kind of switch the script. So I hear like a ton of myths out there for why people don't do it. The biggest one is people don't think they have leverage in a salary negotiation. They still are in that interview mindset where they need to kind of prove themselves. Also, show that they really need the job because they might. With the recent layoffs, maybe they are transitioning and they're worried about getting a new job. However, if you start to actually think back on the recruiting process, is very rarely is it like one quick interview and you're hired. Usually it's like a week or months of interviewing until you go ahead and like display your skills to all of everyone on the hiring team and they finally decide that like, hey, this is the right candidate for the job. And they look to the recruiter and say, hey, make sure you close this candidate out and get them to start as soon as possible because we need them on the team. That's actually when the leverage shifts in the interview. And if you were to go ahead and actually walk away from that job, very rarely do they have another candidate set up. Typically, they have to now spend costs to do more recruiting. They have an empty seat, as well as everyone on the hiring team is probably pretty annoyed because they didn't get the right candidate. And now they have to go ahead and wait and do interviews again. So that's one of the biggest myths, right? Is not having leverage. Also, a lot of people think the employer will outright refuse. But even at my practice, we have a 94% success rate. So that means 94% of the time that we negotiate with a company, they actually do move on the offer. So it's right there. I mean, with that data point is it makes sense to go through it as long as you're going through the right way. Because like another myth that you've probably heard, Christian, is a lot of people think that they're going to rescind the job offer if they're negotiate.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
A scary
but
thought,
I can
honestly, right?
it's terrifying, right? Like you go through this interview and you're like, shoot, I don't, what if they pulled it and
Right.
then I'm back at square one? But to be honest, I've never seen a company actually rescind a job offer from negotiating
Mm.
as long as you take the right steps, right? If you're being kind, you're taking a database approach and you're just asking questions and having a candid conversation, almost like you're talking with them as a friend. There's no reason they would rescind the offer. Salary negotiation is so common that it makes sense for them either one to work with you or be candid and let you know that they can't do it before they would ever pull it away. Because the worst case scenario is you accept anyways, but at least you tried to negotiate to see if there was more money on the table.
That's true. You mentioned something that I feel is very very important to dive in a little bit more and expand on, and is that a mindset shift that needs to happen. Because when you are in the hiring process, you go into that interview process. It's very stressful as it is already, right? And then you get into this mode of interviewing, of selling yourself, right? Selling the value that you have, that you can bring to the organization, and sometimes the willingness to do whatever it takes to be successful, right? And that whatever it takes mindset and mentality can be, yeah, I take whatever you give me, and that, when it comes to the salary. So I
Yeah.
think, how do you change that mindset? How do you go from selling yourself and being like, yeah, I can do anything that it needs to be done to be successful at this organization, to be like, okay, now you see the value in me, you know, now I need to change my mindset. How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely easier said than done because that is the mindset you have. But like a good way to do about it, do with it is think about the last role you were in. You were probably in there for multiple years. Maybe it was 3 years, maybe it was 8 or 10 years. So this decision that you're about to make when you accept could be where you kind of spend your career for the next multiple years. So it makes sense to slow down. That's the biggest recommendation I can give anyone when they get a new job offer is slow down. This is now kind of your time to make sure, do your due diligence now that you're out of the interview stage, hopefully ask some questions and make sure you understand all aspects of what you're getting into before you accept. If they're able to slow down, typically that's where the mindset changes and they're able to see, okay, this is on the offer. I have the job offer at the moment. I can always accept, but do I understand it? And how is this going to play out over the next few years once I accept?
That is really good because I think that getting paid well will add to your happiness at work. I feel that if you feel that you're compensated fairly, and that was done from the get go, initially, from the very beginning of this being hired at this company, you will perform a lot better. It's one of those things that will be off your mind now, right? Because you're happy with how much you're getting paid, you're satisfied, and now you can build from that, right? And go forward. Um,
Exactly, because like otherwise, what else is on your mind? Of shoot, I was in such a rush that I accepted, but now I found out like another coworker is getting paid more. Right? Maybe I am underpaid. You didn't slow down to do the research, make sure you thought everything out. So instead, it would be better to sit down, negotiate it, and if they don't move, at least you know you tried. You're like, you know what? Hey, I kind of got that out of my mind. I did the best I could. At least now I'm happy in the role.
that's true. That's true. I mean, at least trying, because yes, it can definitely be a very, very crucial aspect of your happiness at work and your performance. Because imagine you get a job, you get excited the first, few months, you go through that honeymoon stage, but after that, you realize you're underpaid or you just average. And then that's gonna be with you the rest of that year of that, 2 years, whatever it is that you're gonna be there before you even consider renegotiating your salary. And that affects everything around you. Your performance affects even your happiness with your family, right? I mean, the weekend, I mean, all that's just really affecting you.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is, I mean, even when you think about getting an increase, is when you negotiate, you're building that skill. So you know how to have it the next time, as well as you're negotiating your starting compensation. So that's where all your increases are going to be based on. So when you get a merit, when you get a promotion, when you change jobs, if you keep doing that, that's how you continue to grow and expand your career earnings compared to kind of what you miss when you don't negotiate. So it's really a skill that I think anyone can do it, whether they work with a professional or do it themselves. It just comes down to kind of how do you go about that.
That makes sense. Now, here is the part that's gonna be the most challenging one, I guess, for a lot of us, right? That maybe haven't done it. How do you do it, right? So, what are some of the recommended steps to successfully negotiate a job offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing is negotiation is not like the car salesman
Mm,
negotiation, where you throw out like a high number, they throw out a low number, you argue until you get to the middle.
right.
It's much more relaxed and kind, and it all comes with like understanding everything first, right? So the first step that I would recommend for anyone to do is make sure you understand the components of your job offer. A lot of people get stuck in the mindset of base salary. Maybe that's what you've always been paid. That's what you have at your current job. But I want you to think about this concept of total compensation. So, especially if you're in the tech industry, usually your compensation is going to have bonus as well as equity involved. And that's the way the company is looking at it, is what is your total monetary take home pay, which is typically your base salary plus your yearly bonus plus the equity that vests in that first year or each year, and possibly a sign on bonus as well. So, those are all going to make up your monetary bonus. So, now that you understand your total compensation, you know how much you're actually going to make, and you can start negotiating both the base as well as the other compensation components. That's the key one. The next step is, like we talked about before, is shifting your mindset, is actually completing due diligence by asking the right questions. A lot of people feel like you need to be rapid fire, that you need to go ahead and throw out the numbers right off the bat, right when you get the job offer. However, a big thing in negotiation is the power of asking questions. Otherwise, you don't know what's on the table. So it's always my recommendation to review the job offer, also review the benefits, and typically come back with some questions to ask the recruiter or the hiring team. Whether it's like, hey, why wasn't a sign on bonus included? Or what's the actual performance bonus achieved on the team in the last year? Few years, right? Is it really that target 15%, or do they either exceed it, or is it less than that? Also, this is like a good way to find out if they're open to remote flexibility, why their 401k might be lower. Because when you ask these questions, you're going to go ahead and find out a few freebies, additional information, and you're going to go ahead and set the tone for the negotiation. They're going to know that you're very interested in the role, but you're also doing your due diligence. So when you do actually share a counteroffer, it's going to come with a little bit more weight. And I don't know if you've done this before, Christian, but a lot of people they get excited just for like a quick raise when they do the salary negotiation. But another big step that I recommend everyone to do is not go off of base maybe what you're getting paid before, but actually research your compensation and the compensation for this role. There's a ton of free sites out there now, whether it's PayScale, Comparably, levels.com, or others that actually publicly post different salary ranges. You do have to be careful because they're going to go ahead and be uploaded publicly. So they could be wrong if there's like equity appreciation. That's probably not what they're going to pay a new hire, or if someone missed some. So I always recommend using at least 3 resources and drawing averages between those to find both the base salary range, kind of the low to the high end, as well as the total compensation range. Because now what someone can do is, since they know their total compensation in the job offer, they can see where it falls on that range and now how much room there is to negotiate. So instead of taking that old school tactic of, hey, let's just throw out like a big high number and see what they come back with, they are now targeted, as well as they can share the data that they found to take a data based approach that will actually achieve better results rather than just saying, hey, can you offer this? And then going that like old school car salesman bartering technique where they split the difference.
Right, right. It's two things that I want to mention about that. The first is around, doing your due diligence and researching to get power in your negotiation. And then the other one is a question around what's happening right now in the the job industry, or the job market, which is many companies required to post the salary, right? So I'll go to the next one here. But first of all, it is so true. To be able to negotiate in a position of strength, you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your research so that your argument has some power, right? And some real leverage and real data and information that's backing up what you're saying. You're not just throwing a number out there and asking for something that is completely, unacceptable, right? And that it may even turn back and make you feel, make you look bad, right? Because you didn't do a research. You're just asking for a number. But I think, as you mentioned, doing your due diligence, researching what the current price ranges or the salary ranges are for that position that you're applying for, all the different considerations around the salary are going to give you more leverage and really understanding knowledge and wisdom on how to speak and how to negotiate that salary, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Unless you ask and do your due diligence, first, you don't know what's on the table. Second, you're just not coming from a strong position or building leverage first. Way too often or not, I see people, they are like, oh, shoot, there's no sign on bonus. I'm super upset. They're like, hey, I have to get this. And they throw it in the offer. And the company will come back and give them a sign on bonus. And then they're just happy with that. However, if you would have simply asked the question at the beginning, saying, like, hey, I noticed that wasn't included, do you guys offer this for my skill set and level? This has been pretty consistent with the other companies I've seen. Usually you'll get that just by asking the first questions to see if it's on the table. Now you can focus on the other parts like compensation. And that's just like an additional booster compared to letting the company use that almost as like a carrot of like, oh, we did negotiate, we gave you this, let's close this out. The same thing is like remote work. Freebies, like what's really big right now is like work from remote setups, Wi-Fi stipends, phone stipends since you're working from home. There's a lot of things on the table that you can win in the negotiation just by asking questions before you actually send over a counter.
Wow, that is very interesting. I really like it. Now, as I mentioned, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with this, but from what I've read so far, there seems to be a new requirement that is some states are really implementing it, and I'm not sure if everybody really is implementing it now, but where companies have to post the salary range, right? For a particular position that they're posting. How would this affect that negotiation? Like if you know there's a salary range and now you know what the kind of top is, you can't really ask for more, or could you potentially ask for even more than what the range shows?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So I actually just chatted with CNN Business about this too, and they released an article on it. But I will say you do have to take the ranges that they provide with a grain of salt.
Mm.
The reason being is, I don't know if one good example is like the Netflix one for a flight attendant, where the salaries were like 90,000 to like four hundred fifty
Oh my
thousand.
goodness.
I will say the companies are kind of making a little bit of a mockery of it, just because the verbiage is within the law is so vague. It's mostly based on like an estimate of what they could provide, and they also aren't required to detail whether it's base salary or total compensation.
Ah,
So
interesting.
the numbers that they're putting aren't always firm numbers that you can count on, which is why it's always best, in my recommendation, to go back to the research, do the compensation research. However, you can now use that as another resource, as that job posting, right? If it says the base salary or the total compensation, you can compare that against the other resources that you pull in to see, is this truthful, or are they actually not being truthful and I could make more than this. Because what I wouldn't want you to do is see someone see that, thinks that that's what the compensation is, and then only go for that when they find out, oh, that was just one component, and they typically actually pay more if I leaned on the compensation.
Oh, that's interesting. That is good information to know and to understand, because it is true. I mean, it can be very vague, that salary compensation. And I saw a post on LinkedIn for a solutions architect job, and the range, and they were saying that they will pay $800,000 a year. And I'm like, that's just doesn't make
Oh,
sense,
gonna have,
like, so I think it goes with what you're saying. I mean, it's just very vague on how they're, the law is written, first of all, and then second of all, like, I believe probably companies are making, a mock of it.
yeah, and I'm hopeful. I think it's honestly it's a good way we're moving to where we do get to more pay transparency.
Yeah.
At least companies are starting to do it. And I'm not saying that all companies aren't truthful. It's just right now it really comes down to doing your compensation research to make sure what they have is factual or what you should be pushing for. But hopefully it'll continue to become a trend to help people see, like, am I getting paid the right way and
Mm.
what's on the table, and getting them more comfortable with talking about compensation.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of resources out there, right? I mean, are there any, maybe could you list a couple of different sites that people, or tools that people could use to be able to prepare, for that salary negotiation?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big ones I would recommend are going to be the compensation sites. So I really like PayScale. There's also comparably levels.fyi, and then also Glassdoor. So those are some good ones, as well as like a quick Google search to see if anything specific in your industry comes up. Those are good ones. We also have a total compensation calculator at the salarynegotiator.com, where you can actually take those components, put them in, as well as put your job offer in, and see how that looks over like the next 4 to 10 years, to understand what total compensation is and how that looks. That way, you actually get an idea of like how to pull those in. But I think, to be honest, the just Googling and researching your company is going to give you a lot of insights, as well as comparing that against like your current company and other benefits that you're hearing from other companies, to see what questions to ask to see if it's on the table or not.
Now, the tool that you guys offer at salarynegotiator.com, is that a free tool, or is there a cost for it?
No, no, it's completely free.
Oh,
So
wow, nice.
it's a yeah, so it's a total compensation calculator. The real goal is way too often or not, like I mentioned before, is people just think of the base salary, and they usually get like demotivated, like, oh, there's only a base salary of X. I was expecting this, and I'm like, well, is there a bonus? Like, yeah, there's a bonus. Well, is there equity? Yeah, but that's just like equity. And I'm like, no, sit down and like map that out, and like, oh, I'm actually bringing home this much per year in monetary pay. So that's kind of why we created it. Is it's a simple tool that you can go in. You can go ahead and put your base salary, your yearly bonus, sign-on bonuses if you have it, and then equity or options. And it now puts it in like a nice graph, so you can see how much you make per year and which one falls into each bucket.
Well, that's a great tool because I feel it gives you perspective, right? Because sometimes, like you mentioned, sometimes you focus on just one piece of your salary. But really, if you really use this tool, for example, it gives you perspective of an overall.
Exactly. especially in tech too, right? With the equity that's going to vest over like 3 to 4 years, knowing what is your overall package, as well as once you get into the negotiation, knowing actually like how much, if you negotiate more equity versus base, how that's going to pay off is big. Because it's always my goal is to recommend negotiating like your recurring compensation compared to when you put it into like you lay out your total compensation in like a quick format where you can say year by year. You'll see that, hey, maybe year one looks good because they're giving you this big sign on bonus, but then year two, you drop down
Mm,
because you now don't have that extra monetary pay.
yeah, that's interesting. That's good. It's really good. Now, let's talk about recruiters, right? I think that when you're looking for a job, there are two ways of getting that opportunity, right? And a lot of the times, many of us have gone through the recruiter side, where is a recruiting company that is just their focus, their business is to find candidates and match them with the company looking for that candidate. And then the other way is going directly to the company that's needing a candidate, a worker, and then applying for for that job directly. On the recruiter side, from what I understand from what my experience has been, the recruiters get paid, for a certain amount of time that you're working for the company. So there's a little piece of your compensation that goes to the recruiting company. Now, as a candidate, as an employee, you don't really care. You don't see that what's happening in the back end. But could that affect how much you get paid if you go through a recruiter, first of all? And then I have more questions about that. But first of all, would that affect how much you get paid if you go through a recruiter than going directly through a company?
Great question. So I wouldn't say it affects how much you get paid because the compensation should be the same regardless which route you do. So it's always good if there is a recruiter that's just like an extra way into the company. However, you called out like a very valid point, right? Is their compensation structure is based off of you getting the job and you staying in that job. So when it comes to the actual salary negotiation, there is incentives on the recruiter side to make sure that you do accept. Otherwise, if they help line up the interviews, get you in the door, and then at the end you decide to move on to another opportunity, they don't get paid. However, they do get paid if you accept. So usually, what we see is they use a few different tactics to make sure that you accept. You also deter you from negotiating to ensure that they close the deal, they get paid out, and on to the next person.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. Now, when it comes to recruiters as well, um, how do you handle objections? From the recruiters. That's something that uh, people getting those objections can tend to be shaking up because they don't know how to approach it. How do I respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see objections usually come up at like 2 points during the negotiation. One is going to be during the interview where they're trying to get your salary expectations. That's huge. What they're trying to do is one kind of set the bar of like, hey, here's what we're thinking to pay to get your reactions. Also see if like you're already within that range, and to see if it's worth their time to proceed forward. But typically they're going to go ahead and ask like, hey, how much are you looking to make, or what are your salary expectations? But the risk that we see with candidates and job seekers sharing this information is one, what if you say a number that's too low? Maybe it's based off of your old company, yet this new company pays more. You run the risk of them taking that number and actually going ahead and providing you like a lower salary than they would have, that's higher on their pay band. Or another big risk that people don't think about, they're like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and throw out a huge number, Christian, and see what they come back with, because then I'll get the most aggressive offer. But then what happens is you throw out a big number, like, oh man, we can't afford Christian, let's go in a different route. And you don't end up getting the job offer. So it's actually our recommendation to handle that as an objection, and actually flip the script back on the recruiter by saying, hey, to be candid, I've been focusing on interviewing for the role, not necessarily what the pay should be at this time. So instead, I'd love to understand from you the compensation range you have approved for this role. That way, rather than releasing any information, you're still in that fact finding since you're in the interview process and trying to see what numbers they're willing to share.
Yeah, I love that because it's very very interesting how it, we need to understand that when you're looking for a job and you're seeing a recruiter, you're a team because the recruiter is trying to get paid by having the right candidates accept the offer, right? And you're trying to find a job and get a job that you like and get paid well. And so as such, you have the opportunity to use your teammates to be able to negotiate the best uh, salary for you, the best package for you. And so it's fair to ask those questions that you probably wouldn't feel comfortable asking the hiring manager, right? But I think the recruiter becomes the buffer that allows you to have inside information to really, really critical data that will allow you to make better decisions and better arguments for your salary negotiation, right?
Exactly. I mean, they're essentially a resource to use, and you should be pulling as much as you can from them. However, the one thing to be scared or careful about is if they're actually sharing the truthful information. So that's why it always comes down to the compensation research. Is if they're sharing, here's what the true top end is, or if they have room to negotiate. And then, actually, usually what happens in most of our salary negotiations is the recruiter gets you in the door, they set everything up, they give you the initial offer. If they're an external recruiter, then the negotiation, our strategy, most recruiters listening to this aren't going to be too happy, is to try to actually have the negotiation direct with the company.
Mhm,
So, like their internal HR team or the manager,
mhm,
because then you just cut out one, instead of having like one person fight on your behalf, now you're having the company fight on your behalf and
mhm.
going direct to them. Because unfortunately, there is the incentive for the external recruiter to get paid if you accept the job. So if you start negotiating, everyone gets a little concerned of, oh shoot, are they going to accept?
Yeah.
And you don't want to take that risk. So usually it's best to do that. But at the end of the day, I mean, they are your biggest resource. They did a lot of time and effort to get you in the door. Just at the final step, make sure you're getting paid correctly.
Love it. Love it. Well, great. We're getting here to the end of the show, but I don't want to leave without talking more about your organization and the services you guys offer. But before I get there, let me talk about something. So, and everybody can do some research on any topic. There's a lot of free resources, free materials. There's a lot of videos, right, that everybody can watch. A lot of podcasts, right, that somebody can listen to. And while we share a lot of great information today, it's not the same to just research and try to learn on your own as having a coach, right? So if you play a sport, for example, you can train all day long, every day on your own. And you're going to realize that you've been training and you've been doing the same mistakes over and over again because you don't have that outside perspective that will give you and tell you, hey, you know what? If you move this way, if you were to do your body in this position, your hit, if you're playing soccer, for example, your hit will be a lot harder, right? Or this will be able to bend in this way or do certain things that you want to do. But because you don't have those eyes outside perspective giving you that feedback, that insight, then you can't really get to that next level. So while we can negotiate on our own, I feel that it's important to have a coach next to you that'll be able to point out the things that will make you an even better negotiator. I mean, we're talking about a livelihood here, right? We're talking about getting paid more than what you are paying now, during that process of finding a job and getting a new job. And so having a coach will be able to help you achieve that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your services that you guys offer for candidates?
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. Because you're spot on, right? It's why most professional sports players have agents. Is they're focused on playing the sport, not like the business comings or their compensation. It's very similar to how we operate with our clients. Is our focus is on making sure that you're getting paid the best in your new job role, which is why we work as their agent one on one to help them negotiate it effectively and get them up to the top end of the pay band. So what our company does is the Salary Negotiator is we offer everyone a free consultation where we can kind of talk through your situation, share our free tips, and then also a little bit about our services if you want to work together. And then if we do work together, we kind of run you through every step in the salary negotiation process, typically act as like a silent third party to help you negotiate your salary while doing the initial questions, also doing the data research to find out how much you should ask for, and then coach you on what to say and what not to say. So, one, you don't jeopardize the relationship with the recruiter. You look great, showcasing your professional skills, and you have a higher probability of actually getting a better compensation. So you can kind of check us out at thesalarynegotiator.com. We're also heavily involved on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/ the salary negotiator. And then we also have a job offer negotiation course as well that you can check out through our site in case you want to go ahead and take the negotiation yourself without hands-on support.
Oh, that's very good. Oh, so it's a course that people can take to learn how to do it.
Exactly. So it's with me, video and text, but it's the same strategies we use through one-on-one coaching, and it even comes with downloadable email templates, phone scripts, as well as like a total compensation
Wow.
tool to help you do the compensation research. And the reason we built that is whether people feel comfortable working with a coach or if they want to build the skills themselves. At the end of the day, we just want people to get out and negotiate rather than just accepting.
That email template, that's so helpful, especially for people that maybe haven't been in the industry for a while, right? Or maybe just out of college. I mean, something as simple as an email template can be very challenging because you have to make sure that you are writing it properly, that you're mentioning the right items on that email. It's your chance to be able to prove that you have professionalism and the ability to communicate via email. So having a template is so helpful.
Exactly. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? Is we preach keep the tone friendly, just like you're helping with a friend or working with a friend that's helping you feel comfortable to the move to the new company. And that's how all our dialogue is. So that's why we help out with templates, phone scripts, and everything to make sure that you can put your best foot forward in these types of negotiations.
Mm. Now, for the audience, I'm not getting paid by the salary negotiator, for this podcast. I just thought that this is such a valuable topic to mention, to talk about, because I feel that it'll help you in your career, in your new job search, right? And so that's why we wanted to bring this topic to your attention. And knowing that there's an organization like the Salary Negotiator that can help you do that. There's free resources and there's paid resources like everything else, right? And so you can find that information on their websites. Now, as you guys know, I always create a page dedicated to the episode. And in this case, of course, we're going to create that. And we'll make sure to share all of the different links that we talked about today here, like the different links to find salary, to do your research, as well as the salary negotiator links that we just mentioned here. Well, we're getting to the end, Brandon. Any closing remarks that you would like to share here with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing I can share here at the end is make sure you slow down, shift that mindset once you land the job offer, and treat the job offer negotiation portion as just part of the recruiting process. To be honest, I think you'll be surprised with what you can get. It's a lot easier than you think. And then you're going to get rid of any of those worries in your head of, shoot, am I being paid right later down the road?
Fantastic. Brandon, thank you so much again. And everybody, thank you for staying here all the way to the end. I expect I hope to see you guys on the next one as well. And you guys have a great day. Thank you for listening to Tech Career Podcast. Don't forget to check out our website for more information on how to connect with us by visiting www.techcareerpodcast.com. That's www.techcareerpodcast.com.